Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the strange readings on his screen. His fleet had been flying through empty space for weeks, checking old star maps and making sure nothing dangerous lived in the forgotten corners of the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire controlled most of the known galaxy. They were the strongest, the smartest, and the most advanced race anyone had ever seen. For thousands of years, they had kept peace by removing any species that might cause trouble. It was not cruel, they told themselves. It was necessary. "Sir, I'm getting weird signals from Sector 7741 Omega," said Officer Veltar, looking confused at his instruments. "The computer says this area should be dead." Kethvar walked over to look at the data. The sector was marked in red on their maps, with warnings written in old imperial text. 3,000 years ago, the Empire had found primitive species living there. The species were too violent, too unpredictable. The Empire had done what needed to be done. "What kind of signals?" Kethvar asked. "Energy patterns, sir, big ones. They look like cities, or maybe factories, but that's impossible." Dr. Yilan, the ship's science officer, hurried over with her tablet. She was one of the best in the Empire at studying dead civilizations. "Admiral, I've been looking at these readings for an hour. These patterns are not random. Something is making them on purpose." Kethvar felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Show me." The main screen lit up with the sensor data. Lines of energy moved in perfect patterns across multiple star systems. Space stations bigger than imperial cities floated in the darkness. Ships moved between planets like busy insects. "This is wrong," Kethvar whispered. "We cleaned this sector. Every world, every moon. Nothing should be alive here." "Sir," Veltar said, his voice shaking, "there are at least 12 worlds with life signs. The energy output it's bigger than our home system." The bridge fell silent. Every officer stared at the impossible readings. The Empire's records were perfect. They never made mistakes. When they decided a species was too dangerous, they made sure that species never caused problems again. "Could it be refugees?" Dr. Yilan asked. "Maybe survivors found the empty worlds and moved in?" "After 3,000 years?" Kethvar shook his head. "And where did they get this technology? These readings show advancement beyond anything in the Empire." He studied the data again. The energy signatures were clean, efficient, and powerful. Whoever lived in that sector had learned how to use resources in ways the Empire had never figured out. Their cities were bigger, their ships faster, their technology more advanced. "Set course for the nearest system," Kethvar ordered. "But keep our stealth systems active. I want to know what we're dealing with before they know we're here." Fiki. Fleet moved carefully through space, using their best hiding technology. The Empire had spent centuries perfecting the art of approaching unknown worlds without being detected. It had served them well during the Great Purge. As they got closer, the readings became even more impossible. Floating cities danced in the clouds of gas giants. Underwater settlements glowed beneath ice-covered oceans. Space elevators stretched from planets to moons like silver threads. "Admiral," Veltar called out, fear clear in his voice, "they know we're here." "What? That's impossible. Our stealth technology is perfect." "Sir, I'm getting a transmission. They're talking to us." The main screen flickered and a face appeared. It was smooth-skinned with small eyes and strange hair. The creature looked young, but its eyes seemed very old. "Imperial vessel," the creature said in perfect Imperial language. "This is Commander Lee of the Human Colonial Defense Force. Welcome to the Sol system. We have been waiting for you." Kethvar's blood turned to ice. Humans. He knew that word from the old records. The violent species from the third planet of this very system. The species that had been eliminated 3,000 years ago. "Impossible," Dr. Yilan breathed. "We turned their world to glass. Nothing could have survived." The human on the screen smiled sadly. "We survived, Admiral. We learned. We grew. And we have been expecting this day for a very long time." Behind the human, Kethvar could see the bridge of an alien ship. The technology was sleek and unfamiliar. Other creatures moved. In the background, species that Kethvar recognized from the Empire's old extermination lists. "So you saved them," Kethvar said, more to himself than to the human. "We saved each other," the human replied. "Admiral, I think it's time we talked. Will you accept our invitation to visit Earth? Kethvar looked around his bridge. His officers stared at him with wide eyes. Everything they had been taught, everything they believed about the Empire's power and perfection was crumbling before their eyes. The species they had tried to destroy had not only survived. They had built something magnificent, something that made the Empire look small and old and tired. Yes, Kethvar heard himself say. Yes, we will come. The transmission ended, leaving the Imperial bridge in stunned silence. Outside the windows, human ships moved like graceful dancers through space, their technology so advanced it seemed like magic. The Empire had found its greatest shame, and that shame had grown into something beautiful. The human ship moved through space like nothing Kethvar had ever seen. It bent light around itself, slipped between dimensions, and arrived at his flagship before his sensors could track it. The docking bay filled with a soft blue glow as the strange craft settled onto the metal floor. Kethvar stood with his guards, watching the ship's door open with a quiet hiss. He expected weapons, threats, or demands. Instead, a young human stepped out and bowed politely. Admiral Kethvar, the human said in perfect Imperial language. I am Commander Li Jinho. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Behind Li came a small female human with kind eyes and silver hair. She wore simple clothes, but something about her made Kethvar feel like he was meeting royalty. This is Ambassador Park So Young, Li said. She speaks for all the human worlds. Park stepped forward and held out her hand. Kethvar stared at it, confused. Dr. Yilan whispered in his ear, It's an old human greeting, sir, a sign of peace. Kethvar slowly reached out and touched the human's small hand. Her skin was warm and soft, nothing like the cold, scaled skin of his own people. We know what you did to our world, Park said quietly. We remember everything. Kethvar pulled his hand back, expecting anger or demands for revenge. Instead, Park smiled sadly. But we also know why you did it, she continued. You were afraid. You thought we were too dangerous, too wild. You believed you were protecting the galaxy from us. You were dangerous, Kethvar said, finding his voice. Your species fought constant wars. You destroyed your own environment. You created weapons that could kill millions. Li nodded. Yes, we did all those things. And when your ships came, when the fire fell from the sky, we learned the most important lesson of our existence. What lesson? That our greatest strength was not our weapons or our anger, Park said. It was our ability to change, to grow, to become something better. She touched a device on her wrist, and the air above them filled with images. Kethvar saw the human homeworld as it had been 3,000 years ago, a blue and green planet, covered in cities and farms. Then came the Imperial attack. Beams of energy fell from space like burning rain. Cities turned to dust. Oceans boiled. The beautiful world became a ball of melted rock and poison clouds. 3 billion humans died. That day, Park said, but not all of us. The images changed. Small groups of humans crawled out of deep shelters and underground cities. They looked at their ruined world with tears in their eyes, but they did not give up. The first 50 years were the hardest, Li explained. We had no clean air, no fresh water, no safe places to grow food, but we had something your empire never understood. What? Each other? Park said simply. We learned to work together in ways we never had before. We stopped fighting among ourselves and started fighting the real enemy, extinction. The images showed humans building new cities under the ground, cleaning the poisoned air, healing the damaged earth. But they were not alone. Other creatures worked beside them, species that Kethvar recognized from Imperial records. The survivors, Dr. Yilan breathed. You found the other survivors. They found us, Li corrected. Species from dozens of worlds that your empire had cleansed. They had been hiding in empty space, on dead moons, in asteroid fields, barely alive, afraid to show themselves. Park's eyes grew bright. But when they heard that humans had survived, that we were rebuilding, they came to us. Not as conquerors or beggars, but as friends. The images showed the impossible, humans and aliens working together to build something new. Cities that floated in gas clouds, where flying creatures could live comfortably. Underwater farms where water-breathing species grew food for everyone. space stations where dozens of different life forms lived in harmony. Each species brought knowledge we didn't have, Lee said. The Dra'kari taught us how to travel between dimensions. The Morthen showed us how to heal with sound. The Krebat gave us the secret of growing food in space. And in return, Kethvar asked. We gave them what humans do best, Park smiled. We adapted. We learned. We made their knowledge work with ours to create something none of us could have built alone. She touched her device again, and the images changed to show the human worlds. As they were now, dozens of planets and moons filled with life and activity, ships that moved like liquid light between the stars, cities that seemed to grow like living things. This is what you created when you tried to destroy us, Park said. You forced us to become better than we ever dreamed possible. Kethvar stared at the images, his mind struggling to accept what he was seeing. The Empire had spent 3,000 years believing they had made the galaxy safer. Instead, they had created something that made their own civilization look primitive. Why are you showing me this? He asked. Park and Lee looked at each other, and something passed between them that Kethvar did not understand. Because, Park said gently, it's time for the Empire to learn what we learned. It's time to choose between destruction and growth. The journey to Earth left Kethvar speechless. The human escort ships moved through space in ways that broke every law of physics he knew. They folded space like paper, slipped through cracks in reality, and arrived at destinations before they seemed to leave their starting points. How do they do that? Dr. Yelan whispered, staring at her instruments. Our best ships take weeks to cross the distance they just covered in minutes. Commander Lee, who had remained aboard the Imperial flagship as their guide, smiled. We learned that space is not empty. It's full of paths that most species never see. The Dra'kari refugees taught us how to find them. As they approached the Sol system, Kethvar saw wonders that made his head spin. Massive rings of metal and crystal surrounded the sun, collecting its energy. Planets that had been dead rocks now bloomed with green life. Moons had been hollowed out and turned into cities where millions of beings lived. Welcome to humanity's true home, Lee said, as Earth appeared on their screens. But this was not the Earth from Imperial records. Where once there had been a single blue and green world, now there were 3 Earths. The original planet floated peacefully in its old orbit, covered in forests and oceans. Above it, a second Earth made of glass and metal spun slowly. It's transparent. Surface showing gardens and lakes inside. Higher still, a third Earth built from pure energy, pulsed with soft light. 3 worlds in one orbital space, Dr. Yelan breathed. The gravity calculations alone should make this impossible. Impossible is a word we stopped using long ago, Lee said. President Kim is waiting to meet you on the Middle Earth. She's very excited to show you what we've built. Their shuttle landed in a city that defied description. Buildings grew like trees, their walls breathing and changing color with the time of day. People walked on paths that floated in the air, supported by forces Kethvar could not identify. Humans and aliens moved together through the streets, not as masters and servants, but as equals. President Kim Min-seo met them at the landing platform. She looked old but moved with the energy of someone much younger. Her eyes sparkled with intelligence and kindness. Admiral Kethvar, she said, bowing in the human style. Welcome to New Sol. We've been preparing for your visit for many years. How could you prepare for something you didn't know would happen? Kethvar asked. Kim smiled. Because we know the Empire better than the Empire knows itself. We've been watching you for centuries, learning your patterns, understanding your problems. We knew that eventually you would find us. She led them through the city, showing them marvels at every turn. Factories that made tools by singing to metal, gardens where plants from 100 worlds grew together in perfect harmony, schools where human children learned alongside young aliens, their minds expanding in ways no single species could achieve alone. This is our research center, Kim said, stopping before a building that seemed to be made of living light. Director, Nam Taemin will show you what we've accomplished. Nam was a quiet man with gentle hands and bright eyes. He welcomed them into laboratories that looked more like art galleries than workspaces. Scientists from dozens of species worked together on projects that made Imperial technology look like children's toys. Our fusion reactors produce no waste. Nam explained, showing them a device no bigger than his fist that powered half the city. The Zenthak refugees taught us how to make matter dance with antimatter without destroying each other. Dr. Yilan studied the reactor with amazement. This should be impossible. The energy output readings are off our scales. We learned that impossible usually just means not yet understood, Nam said kindly. When your people destroyed our world, we lost our fear of trying new things. We had nothing left to lose. They moved to another laboratory, where humans and aliens worked on ships that could cross the galaxy in days instead of years. The vessels didn't use the rare crystals that powered Imperial drives. Instead, they ran on something Nam called cooperative energy. What does that mean? Kethvar asked. The ship's computer is alive, Nam explained. It's a blend of human artificial intelligence and more than bio-consciousness. The ship wants to fly, so it finds ways to move that useless energy and cause no damage to space itself. Kethvar watched as one of the test ships simply vanished, then reappeared on the other side of the solar system seconds later. His own fastest vessels would have taken hours to make the same journey. But what truly shattered his understanding was what he saw in the cultural centers. Species that the Empire had marked for extinction were not just surviving, they were flourishing. Their art, their music, their ways of thinking had been preserved and celebrated. A Krebat child, whose people were supposed to be extinct, played with human children in a garden. A Zenthak elder, from a species the Empire had eliminated centuries, Hago taught young humans how to make medicine from starlight. You didn't conquer them, Kethvar realized. You saved them. We saved each other, Kim corrected. Each species brought gifts we never knew we needed. The Krebat showed us how to grow food in the deep cold of space. The Zenthak taught us to heal injuries that would kill other beings. The More Than gave us new ways to think about consciousness itself. And what did humans bring to this alliance? Kim looked out over the city, where hundreds of species lived and worked together in peace. We brought the one thing that made it all possible, she said softly. We brought the belief that different doesn't mean dangerous. We brought the idea that the galaxy is big enough for everyone. Kethvar stared at the impossible civilization around him, built by the species his empire had tried to destroy. They had turned their greatest tragedy into their greatest triumph. The dinner took place in a strange location that made Kethvar's heart heavy. President Kim had brought the imperial guests to the ruins of Old Seoul, the original human capital that had been destroyed 3,000 years ago during the imperial attack. The ruins had been carefully preserved. Melted buildings rose like twisted fingers toward the sky. Streets of black glass reflected the light of floating lanterns. In the center of the destruction stood a massive wall covered in names, billions of them, written in the flowing script of the human language. This is our memorial, said General Han Jiwoo, a scarred woman who walked with a slight limp. Every human who died that day has their name here. We read them all once each year so we never forget. Kethvar stared at the wall of names. 3 billion dead. His people had done this. The weight of it pressed down on his shoulders like a mountain. We don't keep this place to make visitors feel guilty, President Kim said gently, setting plates of food on a simple table. We keep it to remember what happens when fear makes choices instead of wisdom. The meal was strange but delicious. Foods from dozens of worlds mixed together in ways that should not have worked, but somehow did. As they ate, Kim spoke in her quiet voice about things that made Kethvar's blood run cold. We know about the rebellions in the Outer Rim, she said, as if discussing the weather. 17 systems have declared independence in the past year. The Vorth sector is refusing to pay taxes. The mining colonies on Keth Prime have stopped. Sending resources to the imperial capital. Dr. Yilan choked on her drink. How do you know about the Keth Prime situation? That information is classified at the highest levels. Kim smiled sadly. We've been watching the Empire for a long time, Dr. Yilan. We have friends in many places. Refugees who escaped imperial cleansings, survivors who found ways to hide, even some imperial citizens who grew tired of the endless cycle of destruction. She touched her wrist device, and holographic displays filled the air above the table. Maps of imperial space showed vast regions marked in red, systems in rebellion, trade routes under attack. Entire sectors that had stopped communicating with the capital. Your empire is dying, Kim said simply. Not from outside attack, but from inside rot. You've spent so many centuries destroying diversity that you've forgotten how to grow, how to adapt, how to solve new problems. General Han leaned forward, her scarred face serious. We've studied your military reports. Your ships are still using technology from 500 years ago. Your weapons haven't improved in centuries. Your soldiers are trained to fight the same old battles against the same old enemies. But the galaxy keeps changing, Commander Lee added. New challenges appear every day, problems that need fresh thinking, new approaches. The Empire tries to solve everything the same way, with force and control. Kethavar felt anger rising in his chest. The Empire has kept peace for thousands of years. We've prevented wars, stopped dangerous species from spreading chaos. You've prevented growth, Kim interrupted gently. You've stopped the galaxy from becoming something better than it was. She gestured to another display showing the human worlds. Ships moved freely between systems carrying goods, ideas, and people. Colonies flourished on worlds that had been written off as worthless. Technologies developed by one species were shared freely with all others. Look at what we've built in the same time your empire has been declining, Kim said. We've created abundance where you see only scarcity. We've found solutions where you see only problems. We've made friends where you make only subjects or enemies. Dr. Yilan studied the displays with scientific fascination. Your resource distribution networks are incredibly efficient. You're producing more food, energy, and manufactured goods than should be possible with your population size. Because we don't waste resources on control, Lee explained. We don't need massive armies to force obedience. We don't lose countless ships fighting rebellions. Every bit of energy we produce goes toward making life better, not maintaining fear. Kethavar stared at the numbers. The human alliance was outproducing the Empire in every category that mattered. Their people lived longer, learned more, created more, and seemed genuinely happy. What do you want from us? He asked quietly. Kim looked at him with eyes full of ancient sadness. We want you to choose, Admiral. The Empire stands at a crossroads. You can continue down the path of control and destruction until there's nothing left. Or you can learn what we learned when your people tried to destroy us. Which is that the galaxy is vast enough for everyone. That different doesn't mean dangerous. That the strength to survive comes not from controlling others, but from working with them. General Han stood and walked to the memorial wall, placing her hand against the names of the dead. Every person on this wall died because someone decided that humans were too dangerous to live. But look what we became when we stopped being afraid of each other's differences. President Kim rose from the table and stood beside Kethavar. Your empire has eliminated hundreds of species over the centuries. Each one took with them knowledge, perspectives, and possibilities that could have made the galaxy richer. You've been cutting away pieces of the future, thinking you were making it safer. And now? Now you have one last choice, Kim said softly. You can try to destroy us as you've destroyed so many others, but that path leads only to your own destruction. Or you can join us in building something better. She looked up at the stars visible through the clear dome above them. The galaxy, there's big enough for all of us, Admiral. The question is, are you brave enough to help us prove it? Admiral Kethavar's ship arrived at the Imperial capital, like a messenger carrying news of the end of the world. Word of his discovery spread through the government buildings faster than wildfire. Within hours, emergency meetings filled every conference room in the massive Imperial complex. Emperor Theclon sat on his ancient throne, listening to Kethavar's report with growing disbelief. The Emperor was old, older than most of his species lived, and he had ruled the Empire for 800 years. He had seen rebellions crushed, worlds conquered, and enemies destroyed. But he had never heard anything like this. You're telling me, the Emperor said slowly, that the humans not only survived our cleansing, but have built a civilization more advanced than ours? Yes, Your Majesty, Kethavar replied. Their technology surpasses ours in every way. Their ships are faster, their weapons more powerful, their resources unlimited. But more importantly, they have allies. Hundreds of species we thought we had eliminated. General Vorthak, leader of the Imperial military, slammed his fist on the table. This is exactly why we eliminate dangerous species. Look what happens when we show mercy. They grow strong and threaten the Empire. They're not threatening us, Kethvar said quietly. They offered to help us. The room fell silent. Help was not a word often spoken in Imperial politics. The Empire took what it needed. It did not ask for assistance. Help us with what? Emperor Theclon asked. With everything, Kethvar answered. They know about our failing colonies, our rebellious systems, our resource shortages. They know the Empire is struggling, and they want to share their knowledge. Dr. Yilan stepped forward with her analysis tablet. Your Majesty, I've studied their technology. If we could learn even a fraction of what they know, we could solve problems that have plagued us for centuries. General Vorthak stood up, his scales turning the angry red color of his species. This is a trap. They're trying to weaken us, make us dependent on them. We should attack now before they grow even stronger. With what? Kethvar asked. General, I've seen their defenses. Their ships appear and disappear like ghosts. Their weapons can destroy targets across entire star systems. If we attack them, we won't just lose. We'll be eliminated completely. The Emperor was quiet for a long time, thinking about the impossible choice before him. Around the table, his advisors argued and shouted, but their voices seemed to come from very far away. Finally, he raised his hand for silence. What exactly are they offering? Kethvar pulled out a small device that President Kim had given him. It projected a hologram showing a space station unlike anything the Empire had ever built. The station was enormous, with sections designed for dozens of different species to live and work together. They want to build a joint research facility, Kethvar explained, a place where Imperial scientists can work alongside human researchers and the other species in their alliance. They say we can learn from each other, and find return? Nothing, Kethvar said. They ask for nothing except the chance to share knowledge and work together. General Vorthak laughed harshly. No one offers something for nothing. This has to be a trick. But Emperor Theclon was thinking about the reports on his desk. Rebellions spreading like disease through the outer systems. Colonies failing because they couldn't solve basic problems. Technologies that hadn't improved in centuries, while the galaxy grew more complex every day. How long, he asked. How long for what, Your Majesty? How long before the Empire collapses if we continue as we are? The room fell silent again. Dr. Yilan checked her calculations. Based on current trends, perhaps 50 years, maybe less. The Emperor closed his eyes. 50 years, less than a single lifetime for his species. The empire that had lasted for millennia would die during his reign unless something changed. Set up the meeting, he said quietly. Your Majesty, General Vorthak looked shocked. Set up the meeting with the humans. We will try their way. 6 months later, the joint research station opened in the space between Imperial territory and human worlds. Director Choi Young-ho, a calm human scientist with kind eyes, worked alongside Dr. Yilan to create technologies that neither species could have developed alone. The first breakthrough came within weeks. By combining Imperial precision with human creativity and knowledge from the refugee species, they developed a new type of engine that could move ships across vast distances using almost no fuel. Word of the success spread quickly through both civilizations. More scientists asked to join the project, then engineers, artists, teachers, and dreamers from dozens of worlds. President Kim stood on the observation deck of the growing station, watching ships dock from every corner of the galaxy. Some carried Imperial citizens, others brought refugees, who had hidden for centuries, and many brought species that no one had seen before, survivors who had finally decided it was safe to reveal themselves. Commander Lee joined her at the window. Both were older now, with grey in their hair and lines around their eyes, but their dreams had grown larger than ever. Do you think they'll really change? Lee asked, watching an Imperial transport dock beside a human vessel. Kim smiled, pointing to a group of children playing in the station's central garden. Young humans, Imperials, and a dozen other species ran together through the artificial grass, their laughter echoing off the walls. Look at them, she said softly. They don't see enemies or allies. They just see friends. That's the future, Lee. Not the Empire's way or the human way, but a new way that belongs to everyone. In the distance, new worlds were being colonized by mixed crews. Imperial efficiency, combined with human adaptability and alien wisdom, to create settlements that thrived like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. The forgotten civilization had become the teacher, and the galaxy was finally learning to grow.